Have you ever seen this? Hold on, let me zoom out. A bit more. There we go. You see it now, right? It's also here, and here, and here, and here. Basically, it's everywhere. If you're one of the millions of people who played FF7's PC port, you've probably wondered what the hell is up with these mouths. They're not in the PS1 version, so what are they doing here? 27 years down the line, it's time you got an answer. Today, we'll explain not only where these gaping black holes came from, but the complex system they were originally a part of. Welcome to the wonderful world of FF7's advanced facial animations. Fans' preoccupation with FF7's mouth textures is nothing new, and in 2017 it led Wes Fenlon, a senior editor at PC Gamer, to track down two former Squaresoft employees and grill them about the porting process. Programmer Jay Fong couldn't remember any specifics about the mysterious mouths, but 3D artist Jason Greenberg did, and he dropped a bit of a bombshell. It turns out these mouths existed in FF7's texture files all along. It's just that the code responsible for activating them was turned off. 8 years later, and with loads of research by FF7's modding community under our belts, we can confirm Greenberg was correct. At least in part. The gaping O's and thin black lines you see on the faces of the PC character models did exist in the 1997 PlayStation build. But what the porting team at Squaresoft didn't know is that these textures were just one part of a larger facial animation system that was scrapped from the original release. Well, not entirely scrapped. You can actually still see them in a handful of scenes, 4 to be exact. Perhaps the most famous is Tifa's conversation with Cloud under the High Wind. Here's how that scene looks in the PC port, and here's how it looks in the PlayStation version. Notice how Tifa's mouth is still there? This happens to be the only scene in the entire PS1 release where a character's mouth appears as a straight line. To complement it, here's the only scene where a character's mouth appears as an open O. Search as you may, you won't find any other mouth textures in FF7's original release. But that's not because they don't exist. It's because they were kept hidden. As it turns out, nearly every character model in the game has at least one mouth texture. In the case of NPCs, this is almost always an open O. Playable characters, on the other hand, come equipped with both open and closed mouths. This doesn't apply to Red 13, who has no mouth textures, or Kate Sith, who wears a fixed facial expression. It also doesn't apply to Zack, who, though programmed like an NPC, shares the same texture format as the playable characters. Looking at this chart, you can probably see where the PC port went wrong. Instead of going model by model and choosing which mouth texture to enable, if any, the team at Squaresoft simply set each character to use the first mouth texture in their data grouping, and deleted any secondary ones. This is why the main party always sports closed mouths, while all but a few NPCs have been cursed with a ridiculous black hole. It's also why Sid's snoring animation on the gondola incorrectly reverts to his closed mouth texture. It should be noted that starting with the Japanese PC port in 2013, all of the game's open mouth textures have been replaced by transparent ones. While this ensures modern ports aren't plagued by goofy O faces, it leaves many other facial bugs unresolved. But let's take a step back. FF7's faces include more than just a mouth. They've also got eyes and eyebrows. If the developers went to the trouble of designing multiple mouth textures, could they also have prepared multiple eye textures? The answer, as you may have guessed, is yes. Aside from their default open and closed textures, each playable character has 3 additional eye states: happy closed, angry open, and sad open. As before, you can actually see some of these textures being used in the original release, albeit just twice. The first time is during Barrett's flashback in Corel, right when he loses his grip on Dyne. Here, we get a glimpse of his angry open eye texture. The second is during Cloud's dream after the Temple of the Ancients, when Aerith visits him in the Sleeping Forest. Here, she famously uses her happy closed eye texture. It probably won't surprise you to hear that, once again, modern ports break what limited use the PlayStation version made of these advanced facial textures. Let's take a look at those two scenes we just saw, but this time in FF7's latest port. You'll see that instead of happy closed eyes, Aerith's model reverts to her default open eyes. And instead of angry open eyes, Barrett's model reverts to, whoa, when did he grow blonde hair? There's actually two different things going on here. Just like with the mouths, the PC porters discarded all but the first two eye textures for each playable character. This accounts for why Aerith's expression doesn't change when the game points to the non-existent third eye texture in her data grouping. But what about Barrett? Well, remember that we're in a flashback here, and Barrett's model is different from his present-day version. In the PS1 version of FF7, alternate models of playable characters can access all 5 of their standard models' eye textures. The game does this by checking them against a list of models associated with their primary counterpart. In the original release, this ensures alternate models like Flashback Barrett, Blue Dress Tifa, and Reporter Yuffie all call the correct facial textures to be drawn. Beginning with the PC port, however, this functionality is broken, and Barrett's flashback model is treated like any other NPC. And the only time NPCs call alternate eye textures is when they blink. In the PS1 version, this is done by simply swapping in a transparent texture for one frame. In modern ports, however, this transparent eye texture no longer exists, and NPCs instead blink by using Cloud's neutral closed eye texture. The same texture is then applied when Barrett's flashback model calls for his open angry eyes. While we're on the subject, you may notice that in modern ports, certain NPCs only blink one eye. However, if you look closely, these broken NPCs also blink their mouths. To make a long explanation short, every character model's face is divided into 3 planes on which 3 textures can be drawn: 2 eyes and a mouth. There are some exceptions to this, like Rude, Godo, and President Shinra, who all have 2 or fewer planes. But it applies to the vast majority of playable characters and NPCs. In most cases, the eye textures are grouped before the mouth. However, some characters have their mouth grouped before their eyes. When a blinking animation is called, the game swaps the model's first 2 textures with a pair of neutral closed eyes, Cloud's eyes in the case of NPCs. If one of those textures is a mouth, even a transparent one, then you wind up with the infamous mouth blink, and only one eye appears to close. While we're at it, here's another oddity of the modern port's facial system. In the original release, Yuffie blinks like any other playable character, alternating between her neutral open and neutral closed eye textures. Starting with the PC version, however, she doesn't blink at all. Instead, she shifts between her neutral open and angry open eye textures. We can only assume the porters accidentally discarded the second texture in her data grouping and kept the fourth instead. But enough about FF7's wonky modern ports. What's more exciting to consider is how the developers originally planned to implement this facial system. Some tinkering around reveals the broad range of emotions it's capable of conveying. A smile here or a sad face there can do a lot to boost the atmosphere of FF7's scenes. However, this system can display more than just expressions. Remember how nearly every character model is equipped with an open mouth? By switching this texture on and off, the developers would have been able to simulate speech. It's a small detail, but dynamic mouths could have made dialogue-heavy scenes a lot more interesting to look at. While only 4 instances of advanced facial textures remain in the game's files, it's not a stretch to assume there would have been many more. After all, why create such a robust system if you only intend to use it a handful of times? Unfortunately, it's impossible to tell if these facial textures were applied in other places. Did the devs implement them in additional scenes only to scrub their work before the final build? There's a chance we'll find some clues once the PS1 version is fully decompiled, but that may take some time. If you're interested in speeding the process along, the project is always looking for new members, and you can find a link to it in the description below. What's easier to guess is why this facial system was all but abandoned. When FF7 released in 1997, the average consumer played it on a 20-some-inch CRT using low-res composite cables. The resulting output was small and blurry, at least by today's standards. What's more, FF7's field maps favor a zoomed-out view. only a small percentage bring the camera close enough to descry any sort of facial expression. And so it's not hard to imagine that partway through development, the team at Square decided advanced facial textures weren't worth the effort. Of course, modern gamers now play FF7 on bigger screens at 1080p or higher. More than ever, we notice the awkward blank space where Sephiroth's mouth should be, or where a gaping black hole resides if you're playing the PC version. Fortunately, FF7's incredible fan community has made big strides to address this issue. In particular, modding veteran True Odin has managed to port the original game's advanced facial system to the PC environment. There are endless ways this new functionality can be used, but for now we've applied it sparingly in our Shinra Archaeology Cut mod. What's more, we've fixed all the facial animation bugs present in the modern ports. You'll have to make sure you're playing Archaeology mode though. As always, we want to thank our wonderful patrons for their support. If you're interested in backing the channel too, be sure to visit the link in the description. Finally, a big thanks to RebTD7, True Odin, and Orichalcon. None of what we've shown here today would have been possible without their hard work.